This is Morten from INKISH TV, and yet another episode about Over the Skype for my beloved followers. You know the drill. We are traveling to other parts of the world to talk to interesting people, and this time I am in the US, and I am talking to a guy who is not from Northern America, but he lives and works in Northern America. And I think it's about time for Herman to introduce yourself. So please, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Morten. Well, thank you for inviting me to have a little friendly chat with you. Again, my name is Herman Sacristan. I've been in digital printing for about 23 years, very passionate about digital printing from the beginning. And right now I work for Keypoint Intelligence as a consultant. We are market research and consultants, and that's what I do. Worked for many years for different vendors by working with their customers, the print service providers, trying to help them grow the volumes, the print volumes, the business. No, from a knowledge competition standpoint, it was never a knowledge competition, but a partnership, just getting together and try to find a win-win situation for the print service provider and for the vendors. So that's what I did, and worked with some and talked to some of the customers, the brand owners and the marketeers, especially on commercial print. So had a lot of fun there in that supply chain. Yeah, that's me.
That's great. And just before we clicked on the record button, you said to me that in these times everybody wants to know everything. So you are very busy giving good advices to people, right? What kind of questions are people asking you these days?
Yeah, basically it's about COVID-19, right? It's a very sensitive situation. What's going to happen? And all that type of thing. So I pull my crystal ball and I look at the crystal ball, and also I spend a lot of time doing research and talking to customers on the field. And also we obviously do surveys and research to try to collect that data. But at the end of the day, it's not about what's going to happen, which is the most popular question. It's about what do you want to happen? And when you have clear what you want to happen, then you'll build a strategy based on that. You implement it, because the ideas need to be implemented. I'm saying this because sometimes print service providers have many ideas, but they only few that implement. They say, if there is no implementation, there is no results. You implement it, and maybe you kind of like influence that outcome, and maybe you get closer to where you want to be. And I think there is a good opportunity to do that, perfect timing to do that right now.
Before we go into details, because we spoke about what to talk about today, and we agreed that it could be interesting to talk about what can help print service providers to grow the business. But before we do that, the reason why I was a little bit curious about what kind of questions you get is because if you look at the printing industry, I think that over the past maybe 3-4 months, especially in the Western world, the COVID-19 has of course been on most people's agenda, and is probably leading its way into almost every conversation you have. Do you think that, I'm asking maybe a little bit leading question, but because I got different opinions from different people that believes that the COVID-19 is actually kickstarting maybe a recession right now. Is that something that you see as well?
Well, obviously, this is a COVID-19 is a crisis, right? And then a recession is attached to that. Now, how long is going to be that crisis and that recession? That's the question. The recession is here. I mean, we see that businesses had to shut down and that type of thing. But again, when is that curve? When is that going to recover? And that's what we're trying to figure out, anticipate. And it's all based on how COVID-19 will develop. Also, when we'll be clear, and some people talk about obviously vaccinations that will clear it completely, but through this period also there are opportunities. There are companies that they selling a lot. Mm-hmm. I went to send one of my friends yesterday something in Germany from here. and it's not a post office in the United States, but they do postal services, post office, FedEx, all the things. And they were telling me that for the last 2 months, it's been like Christmas for 2 months. They're making so much money. So obviously Amazon and other online businesses, they're doing very well. So not everybody's struggling, but some people are struggling, right? So it's finding your niche, is again transforming yourself and adapting yourself to the situation, also to make this process as least painful as possible. And that's where you have to, I think that you have to put your mind into, instead of just sitting and waiting for whatever is going to happen. So we'll see early days. Yeah.
The reason why I'm asking is because I think that sometimes the moment that you identify a situation, let's say you identify a crisis, or you identify a problem, or you identify whatever thing happens in your business, that is the time where you need to speculate about what takes you from that position to the next position. So I think that it's it's a fact, as you also mentioned, it's a fact that we are the COVID-19 is a crisis and is definitely kickstarting a recession. But in the down curves of the recession, that is where people start to think and be smarter. And that I was thinking of this because working for Keypoint Intelligence, I would kind of assume that you have knowledge about what goes on vendor side, what is in the pipeline of development, and how will that change. Everything is now changing when it comes to the exhibitions, to product releases and product launches and all things like that. So I was just like, from a research perspective, I don't think it's maybe so bad to have a little fresh recession, right?
And these recessions and these crises, what allow us is to people to slow down and pause a little bit, and to reconsider and revisit and rethink a strategy, and people listen more. So this is what we're seeing, right? So that's why I'm thinking, and we were thinking, this timing is great for everybody. Because the day-to-day, the urgency of the day-to-day sometimes stop us from doing the holistic organic things that will drive our business better. And now I think that this pause is helping. And when I think about print service providers, customers, and I'm talking about commercial printers, those marketeers, and I read, I'm in some of their groups, and I read and hear what they're saying, and there's a lot of pause. They open to listening now. Do you have a good story to tell them? Can you help them? That type of thing. That's a question that you need to ask yourself. How can you help them? And another thing that we see is that in these particular times, the companies and the business owners that drive the strategy with their hearts, not just with their minds, and they just commit to help, because at the end of the day, business is about helping somebody else. Those ones are doing very well for themselves. They're adapting, and they're doing very well, including the vendors, the ones that they're focusing on helping, right? And yes, they have their struggles with product launches. Now the pie might be a smaller of buyers, because some print service providers, they're going to wait until see what happens. So strategically, they also have to think, right? And I'm thinking.
Because I was just thinking for a second when you listening to what you're saying, and that was like, I don't know if you saw that, but yesterday there was an analyst meeting from Heidelberg where they were showing some numbers, because they have these connected machines, so they use these statistics and these data to see how things are developing. And they showed in the Q&A, they showed a slide with the development of commercial print globally, and it was just a 16 weeks period, but that was at the end of their Q4, which was for March 1st, right? And in that you could see that sometimes in commercial print, at least with their customers, the decrease was up to 40% of volume for weeks print. And I was thinking that when you and the knowledge that I know that Keypoint Intelligence gather from your research, I was just wondering, do you think a lot of the commercial printers, when they're considering about the future, also consider to change the segment of the market? Because if you have good old Heidelberg machine, I mean, you can easily
Right.
change it from being a commercial printer to a packaging printer, for example.
Right, but you have two options there, right? And we've seen similar numbers depending on where you are in the world, right? But you have two options, and we've seen customers on both sides of the fence choosing these two options. Either you reinvent yourself and start maybe selling something that is needed right now. And I have a good friend and customer, all customer in Spain, in the north of Spain, Estudios Durero, who they actually are creating codes, hospital codes, to the health authorities to help them not getting infected and all that. And this is a commercial printer, a graphic arts communicator kind of thing, commercial printer, right? And they had the machinery to do sewing of textile and cutting because they do POSs that is textile based, but they've never done any codes. They got the designer to do the design. They're doing 5,000 codes every day. Because of that, they've been on TV. The marketing awareness has been huge. The owner was telling me that he's getting emails from existing customers, how proud they are of them, and they're looking forward to keep working in the future, and new potential customers. So this guy took it that way, and the other guys with the face mask or whatever, just driving it with the heart. But other printers, they thinking, well, I've been pitching printing as a strong communication channel, and especially digital printing with the flexibility of talking to different people in a different way, being more personal and that type of thing, which, by the way, that concept is very old. It's 1,000 years old, this personalization anyway. Sometimes it feels like it's something that we invented 20 years ago. And this is the time. Sometimes it's not that you were selling the wrong thing, it's that the timing was off. So other print service providers are utilizing this timing to push harder what they've been pitching and selling, and be more strategic while their customers have a pause and then reconsidering the whole strategy. So this is the way we see it.
But that sounds that sounds of course promising. But do you think that counts for the majority of let's say commercial printers, or is that like the few that stands out and really do things?
Well, this is a next step, and I don't know how long is your show here, but I tell you, I am one of those guys that believes, I'm talking commercial printing, okay? And I'm talking commercial printing because I believe in my heart that is the application that allows printers to differentiate themselves more, only because they have the chance, not the guarantee, but the chance to be able to influence and develop and participate in the content. All right. When you talk about publishing, the content is generated by an author. It's nothing that you can do. You just produce and manufacture a product. Transactional is driven by some consumers' activities. Photo books is driven by somebody else. Now, being close to the content, to me, I feel that allows you to differentiate yourself farther and beyond the specs of the printing products. So I'm talking about commercial printing. But when I'm thinking if everybody's ready, and I'm thinking about the type of products that brands purchase in print, which at the end, what they're trying is to try to sell something to somebody else. And I look at these print service provider salespeople that they've been selling for sometimes 10, 15, 20 years. To me, these people are marketeers, because for me, salespeople, they do more marketing than sales. We hope that they will do more sales and marketing, but 90% of the time they're promoting and marketing their products, and then 10% maybe they selling, right? So to me, is that they don't realize that they are marketeers the same as the marketeers that they sell into. They think that their marketing is using one channel, which is face-to-face, and their customers, they use in different channels. But the fundamentals and the core is more pure in a salesperson doing marketing than in a marketeer. And these salespeople unconsciously and naturally follow the right methodology and steps of marketing, which their customers, marketeers, sometimes ignore, and they get hurt with the results. So to me, it's a problem of focus, from the print service providers, and an issue of believing that they could influence that strategy and that marketing strategy. And I can give you the details. When I talk about the focus, to me, printers need to stop selling print and start selling what the customers are selling, because they're selling the wrong products. The customers are buying print to sell their products. So focus on what the customer is selling and not what you're selling. That is the first problem that I see. And I've seen salespeople that by doing that, they're asking different questions, having different conversations, and being able to help the customer more and differentiate themselves against competitors. So that's what I see. And I can talk a little bit, if you want, later or whatever, about why a salesperson doing marketing does this natural thing.
You are an American. You talk all the time, so I just interrupt you.
and I'm Spanish. I'm American, but also Spanish. We talk a lot too.
And okay, that's fair enough. No, because I want to touch a little bit upon something that you and I spoke about a couple of weeks ago, because I think that we actually agree on a lot of different things in relation to the product and the sales. And I remember that we spoke about, first of all, maybe the one of the big challenges in print when the internet came is that we were trying to use the same measures when we are trying to value the printed communication. We use the same terminology, and we want to use the same kind of measures as we do on electronic media, and that I believe is one of the devastating things in relation to selling print, because if you have a printed brochure or something like that, it has a way longer shelf life, right? If you have the tactile emotion of a printed product, it gives you something that you can't get on email yet, at least, right?
Right. Yeah, but this is the biggest problem that I see, that us, analysts, yourself, the printers, the marketeers, everybody talks too much about the vehicle, the channel, the internet, the email, the banners, the print. And we need to talk about the strategy first. The strategy drives the channel. So for me, all the channels with the strengths and weaknesses, they have a fit in the market. For me, there is no one better than the other. It's how you fit them in that marketing strategy. So customers, they need to think, and we need to think and help them think, what are you selling? Who do you want to talk to? And how do you want to talk to? And how many times do you have to talk to those people? And then choose the right channel. And I agree with you. Every channel has that.
But that is exactly the reason why I'm bringing this up, because if you look at, let's say that we look at what drives the industry from an innovation perspective. I mean, one thing is, of course, that customer and customer demand create new applications based on technology available. But I think it's also a fact that the print vendors, I mean the vendors of the equipment, they are maybe way too focused on the machines and the technology and the specifications, rather than, I think, for example, that I kind of try to challenge from time to time that when you go to a trade show, you see equipment, but you don't see like a lot of people in the auditoriums for learning how to sell, how to be good marketeers, how to develop the right application, how to listen to your customer, and how to, use these kind of measures in order to grow the industry, because it starts somewhere, right? We want to have the Canons and the HPs and the Heidelbergs to be great companies developing new technology, but if we can't create the demand from the customers who are going to buy and support these things, it's a negative spiral, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I said at the beginning. All of us, we focus too much on our products and not enough for our customers' products, right? And this is what is driving the whole thing. That printer is driven by a print buyer that needs to print something to say something to somebody else, right? So we need to focus on that. And in all fairness to these vendors, I think that most of them, they have tried in the past to build some type of business development activities or whatever, just to talk more about the sales strategy and all of that will drive the printing press. And I don't know what the issue is, if it's just return on investment, or is not having the right people, or not having the right approach, or I don't know what it is, but clearly it hasn't worked fully. Or maybe the issue is that even though there's been an effort towards that, the commitment, it hasn't been 300%. And when you do this, it has to be 300%. So in some areas, I've seen vendors maybe that they kind of like testing the water, they did it halfway. And for me here, when we talk about these things, either you're pregnant or you are not pregnant. You cannot be half pregnant. Either you go all the way or you don't. And maybe that could have been part of the issue. But I think that in all fairness, they have tried. They have tried. And I agree. And think about it now. A vendor, right? When their customers are extremely worried about sustaining the business, right? They are not really in the market to buy in a press for the most part, but they will be if they had enough volumes, print volumes, to justify that investment. So if I was a salesperson of a vendor, I wouldn't focus on trying to sell press because it's mission impossible, kind of. There's going to be a few customers that they're going to buy, right? But I will focus on how can we help these people to drive more volumes. And there are things during COVID-19 with the mailbox and direct mail and all of that, that it makes a lot of sense. How can we help drive the volume so the customer feels comfortable to buy the press?
But
that's not the approach. Yeah.
But that was exactly my point when I say about these things, because the measures, because the problem with the print compared to an email is basically that it takes longer time. But if you only evaluate that because of the time it takes, not of the output it gives you, then your measures are totally wrong, right? And I think that, and that was why I was asking you whether you think that your example from the Spanish printing company is a representative answer, because I don't think it is. I think a lot of printers, unfortunately, are sitting and waiting for the good old times.
Right. No, I agree. No, and that's the thing, is understanding where the channels fit into the strategy, and not the other way around. Otherwise, putting the carriage in front of the horse. And trust me, some marketeers do that. I've done presentations to a marketing community, and they tell me, how do I do this with email? And I say, but what do you mean? You pick the vehicle, the channel. What is your strategy? Who are you talking to? So picking the channel first is the wrong thing to do. It's fundamentally wrong. The channel is at the end. I have to say this to this person, which channel I'm going to use. And then when you were talking about email and print, email is oversaturated, right? There is the spams. We receive so many emails. I hate most of them, and that type of thing. But for somebody that knows who you are and is interested to listen to you, probably is the fastest and cheaper channel ever. So for loyalty programs, I will use it. Now, don't use email for lead generation, because nobody's going to listen to you. And then I use the mailbox, especially today when COVID-19, everybody's home, everybody wants to go outside, an excuse to take the dog for a walk or go to the mailbox, open. And then imagine, mailbox is the least competitive channel in the world. You only receive 3 or 4 or 5 mailers every day. You receive hundreds of emails. When you go to the internet, you see thousands of banners sometimes, if you could count them, right? So the least competitive channel. But you need to understand the strategy first. And when do you use email? When do you use mailbox? When do you have a banner on the internet and do all that IP, strategy linked with the house and all that? It's just we focus too much on the channel, and we don't focus enough on the strategy, and the strategy should drive the channel.
But I totally agree with you, and that is actually been one of the missions that we have tried to communicate during all the years that we have now existed. However, one thing that I kind of think is a challenge, to be honest, is I don't know how it's in the US, but I think that in Europe, I'm not talking about all Europe's and all details, I'm just talking about how I see it. It's like, in 15 years ago, every printing company, they wanted to be full service provider. So they were like designers and web departments and, everything, fulfillment, everything.
Right.
And with the driving of efficiency on printing machines, and also that has led to, unfortunately, lower pricing on a lot of things, which I don't really think needed to have lower prices. But the thing is that that if you look at the printing company, maybe some of them are not so connected to the customers that they don't need because they have become the commodity factory. So all the value adding that you're talking about here, maybe they are not even talking to people who are influenced by it. But let me give an example. If you talk to the marketing manager in the company, or marketing assistant, you might be influencing a person who can see that's the sanity of what you're talking about. But if you're talking to the procurement department, I mean, they don't give shit. They just want it as cheap as possible, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that the printing companies in many countries have moved away from being important part of the strategies and the communication, and become way more the factories where they just, in quotation, deliver.
Yeah, to me, I'm sorry, but that's no excuse. I will, as a print service provider.
No. It's not because I'm saying it's an excuse. I'm just saying that I think it's a fact that happens to some printing companies at least.
No, it's a fact. But to me, if I was a print service provider, I wouldn't take it as an excuse, because I will still work with the procurement people under those procurement bases. And they buy based on price, because that's the job. And that's the job. The job is not buy something that is going to help marketing or whatever. They've been asked to buy on price. At the same time, that wouldn't stop me to have my activities with other customers and reach out to the value chain up high to the strategy, and try to have some customers like that. So when I talk that way, I'm not saying that you should have all customers that way. What I'm saying is that try to have or find some customers that allow you to participate in their strategy and allow you to bring that extra value and that type of thing. And at the same time, you are going to have different customers that won't allow you to do that. So that's the way that I see it. But I think that the money is in that value. Yes. Otherwise, you are producing a product based on specs, and everybody says, me too, I can do exactly the same. Once you participate in the strategy, that is the value, and you link to what the customer wants, which is selling more. That brings a different value.
Yeah, I can tell you that my colleague Henrik this morning, he asked me, he said, why do you think that people are buying from a print broker? And I think that's a very good question. And I said to him, I think it's actually a few reasons for it. I mean, one thing is that if you are in procurement, or if you are in a small company, you don't have to deal with so many printers, because if you have the right print broker, you can buy many different kind of technologies from one source. That is one thing.
Right.
Another thing that stroked me a little bit as well is that I think that some printing companies throughout Europe, at least, maybe also in the US, have come to a situation where they have maybe not so many people working in sales anymore, because so they don't have the resources to be qualified for the agenda that you're talking about. Because I totally agree with you, and I'm just saying, I think that these conversations that we have here over the Skype, and I think it's a brilliant subject that you and I are talking about right now. I'm just saying that we have to figure out what is the next step for the printing industry. Maybe that is a little bit back to the roots, where you have qualified people, not just about the product and the application and the technology, but also about customer needs and how you develop the strategies and select the communication objective rather than the channels, as you spoke about.
Yeah. To me, is the only way that printing will grow, by linking it to the core, by linking it to the strategy. If printing becomes a just manufacturing factory of just printing, we are not influencing print. When you influence print is up high when you talk in a strategy. Otherwise, these marketeers, they use an email because it's cheaper. Yeah. When it's not cheaper, because sometimes print, even though has a higher cost, it's cheaper because it brings a better return on investment. But if you don't participate up there in the strategy when they're making those decisions, print is going to go down and down and down. And to be honest with you, I don't think that there is nothing wrong with print. I think that print is strong. I think that it's very relevant. I see as a consumer, as a recipient of print, I see as an analyst. It's just that we don't participate in the right conversations, and also having link it to the objectives of marketing. I mean, I've seen print service providers going with a printing piece that looks beautiful and tell the marketeer, there you go, what do you think? And the marketer says, it's beautiful. How much?
Yeah.
And I say, what do you mean, how much?
Yeah.
You just presented something pretty, which is not necessarily functional. He's looking for something functional. Now, when you give him the price, he says, you're crazy, that's too expensive. How about presenting, will this document capture the attention of your customers? And isn't it true that the first objective in marketing after finding the right customer is capturing their attention? Because if you don't capture their attention, they don't listen. Will this help you? So he can visualize potential return on investment of that printing document to a marketing objective. We cannot sell printing disconnected from the marketing objectives of the customer. You need to make a link for the customer to understand the value. Otherwise, it will say very pretty, not for me, very expensive. So this is what I see that there is the problem in all this, myself personally.
I totally agree, and I like your Spanish passion coming through the screen. So that is really,
of course, the torero, the Latino.
Latino. Okay,
Latino.
One thing that came to mind as we spoke is because, when you go to, for example, trade shows and you see the Skodixes and Hycons and all the nice, really expensive equipment that you would like to use for making really nice print, right? I actually made a film a couple years ago that I re-saw again a few days ago, and it was actually about, I think it resonated with you because it was about paper. I mean, if you go online and you have like commoditized paper, and you are not a printer who is a commodity online printer, but you can't afford a MGI or Skodix. In that film I said, you can differentiate by finding paper that stands out, because if you have a printer or if you have an offset machine and you find some substrates that really stands out from it, that is enhancement as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I tell you, we need to think when we sell print of the three basic fundamentals of marketing. Well, the first one is identifying the right customer. Okay, but I'm talking on the engagement. Capturing attention, being relevant, informative or helpful, and make it easy for people to buy. Anything that you do from a printing perspective, you need to ask yourself a question: will this printing help my customer capturing the attention, be relevant, and make it easy for them to buy with codes, QR codes, AR incentives, whatever it is. And you need to present it based on that, because that's what your customer objectives are: capturing attention, being relevant. And being relevant could be the same message for everybody. I'm not talking about personalization, even though you have more opportunity to be relevant when you can obviously segment your message and that type of thing. But this is what we need to ask ourselves, and we don't.
No, and that leads me to the last question, because we have now spent half an hour together. But I have one question I would like you to talk about before we end. Where and who should be the driver for this kind of information?
Well, I think that is everybody in the supply chain has to commit 100% to this, to drive up to the strategy of the print buyer and influence the print buyer at the strategy level with print. Now, how do you do that? The vendors will have to, I think, commit more to help their customers be prepared for that. And their customers need to also be prepared to do that. And I tell you, this is a different conversation. We can have another call. Salespeople, that they are these good salespeople in the printing industry, they know sometimes more about marketing than their own customers. And the core and fundamentals of marketing, because they do it. They segment the client base, they profile it, they capture attention, they're relevant, they make it easy for people to buy, and they track and analyze. They do it naturally. And this is what their customers are not doing naturally, and they're failing. It's just for them to believe that, yes, I am a marketeer and I can do this. And once that happens, they will be more confident to have this type of conversations with the customers. The customers will see them differently. So change the perception of he's a printer, he doesn't know anything about marketing. And then we can start influencing all this. But we need to all work together to prepare for this, because I think that is great opportunity for print up there in the marketing mix. And print is not sick, and nobody's gonna kill. COVID-19 is not gonna kill print. I can tell you that. He's not a sick child. He's a very strong child that needs a little bit help of representing him a little better upstream in the strategic area.
And I think that was a wonderful ending of our conversation. So, Herman, I would like to thank you very much for participating in this Over the Skype. I forgot to ask you in the beginning, so where is it you're located? That is on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina. Beautiful North Carolina.
Nice place. I love North Carolina. So, Herman, I will take up on you to talk about the specific details on a later stage, because I think it's truly important. And as you know, INKISH is always eager to find ways how we can support the printing industry. That is in our DNA. That's what we do. That's what we do for our living. So once more, thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.